because we now talk about attack surfaces. This picture will be quite complicated, but don't worry, I'll go through it slowly. It's lots of things now in one go. So here is the user, Alice is here, and she's the one who is now the active user in this scenario. This horizontal direction is the intended flow of information. That's what Alice wants to do. She might want to talk to Bob here, and there's information going back and forth with them, or she might want to interact with a local device, such as a phone or a smart TV or a home assistant or something like that. And that local device, when it's unable to do the action itself, then it might need to ask for help from a remote service or cloud service, like that. Like the weather in Japan example, my phone does not know what the weather is like in Japan right now, so it has to ask that from the cloud service. So that is the intended functionality, and there's information flowing between all of them. Now all the deadlines, so all the lines going downwards for there are unintended, so different places where the data can leave the intended path. And I go in the next slides. I'll go through each of them through to kind of explain what they mean. This is now meant just to show that that every component and every kind of every module and every connection can be a place where information leaks. So the first one, so here number one here is what I call the cloud leak. So when user Alice talks, no, the wrong button. User Alice talks to the device, asks for the weather in Japan. She actually expects to get the answer, but now that information then could go to a second service, like an advertiser. So that is typical, well, like probably the most common thing we think about, that it goes to a different place. False activation. Now that comes to the Facebook example. So we can have interaction. Alice and the local device can have an interaction. For example, you could have the say lights off. Some scenario that then the local device supposedly now can turn the lights off. It does not need the remote service for that. So it shouldn't go there. So that would be a privacy leak. But perhaps also more like a more entertaining example is that there was some years ago news stories that Alexa, so some kid had mistakenly bought the dollhouse from through Alexa. So and that's a real problem, that kids can sometimes then buy things through Alexa. And this was in the news, on the TV, and they said on the TV that this kid said that, Alexa, buy me a dollhouse. And this was played in hundreds of homes around the US, which had Alexa at home. So the Alexa bought hundreds of TV viewers dollhouses. So kind of that's a false activation. So there was things happening, and then the local device thought that it's for me now. I have to do something. I have to buy my dollhouse. So it was good for Amazon. They sold lots of dollhouses. But so this is a real problem. It's again on the border whether it's a security problem or a privacy problem. But anyway, it's a problem. Now this is a bit more nuanced one, so cloud access. For example, now if in a medical scenario, we have Alice. Alice is a patient, wants to have some medical analysis through a voice interface. Again, that could be the Parkinson's or COVID analysis from the voice. And then she gets her service as she wants, but that is also stored then for research purposes on the hospital kind of storage. And then a researcher, Eve, can then get access to that information. She's supposed to have access, but her access can be exceeded. So she could then hear, Eve could hear things about Alice which she's not supposed to hear. So she could hear private interactions at home, for example, which is not supposed to hear. Yes. Now, this is also more technical one. Now, in many cases, like it would be useful to have, like, actually, let's say a meeting room. Now we have a meeting room here where we have lots of phones around, and we have remote participants. And now it's been a bit of a problem that we need to run around with the microphone here. But we have phones already which have microphones, so it would be useful to use the phones as microphones in this meeting. It would make life simpler. But which phones to use? That's the question. How do we know that this phone is not part of the meeting, and then the person who is standing or sitting next to you here is very close by in the same internet, like same VLAN network, or even the same Bluetooth access could have. Should his voice get transmitted into our conversation? How do we know that? So that is the problem. How do we know which devices to connect in a scenario like that? Speech interface leak, that's more practical perhaps. So usually we always talk about how cloud services get bad access. But it could be also that when I talk to my phone, then Jolly is nearby and hears what I say to my device. But also, not only what I say, so I'm supposed to know that Jolly is near, that I wouldn't, like we have a cultural experience of privacy. So I'm not supposed to say something which he's not supposed to hear. But how would my device know that? Let's say I kind of want to agree on a business meeting with Jolly, and I ask my phone that, can you book me a kind of meeting for Wednesday? And then the phone could answer no, I can't do that because I have date night. Could happen. And that would be then private information, the date night information going to Jolly or his phone. That's a real problem. Currently, I don't think anyone is working on this problem. No one. And then also, discussion leak. This is also has happened problem. So there has been incidents where there was a dinner party at the home. They were talking with each other, and suddenly Alexa activated. So thought it was someone was talking to him, and then it called to a random person in the phone book, and all the conversations at that party was then transmitted to a random person. It should not happen. Shared service. I think I mentioned this earlier, like Monday. At least if you have a smart TV at home, can have multiple users, but the voice history is then stored for everyone, or could be stored, unless you have separated your user account from the smart TV. So then your roommates or your partner can have access to your voice commands on that smart TV. Doesn't feel good to me. So of course, one thing is like that. Of course, I'm not supposed to do things which are bad for my partner or my family. But there are also like positive things I can do. If I plan a birthday party for my wife, she's not supposed to know that. But now the device knows it. So the device might leak that to my wife. So it's not only about like some shady stuff. Right. So then what can we, so this is still now on like on the technical level, so what can we do to protect privacy? So now comes first a list of approaches, and then I go through them one by one. So information isolation, so that's basically trying to reduce the information containing a signal. So if you want to have a message transmitted, we could try to remove all the other categories. That is possible. But so, and the idea is often then that the speech signals should stay as a speech signal. So we can still, a human can still hear it as a speech signal. It should sound natural, but all this other information is hidden. I've forgotten one thing. So when we talked about message and side information, usually message is text part. So that is typically perhaps also like style, how you say it, can be part of the message. But there are many applications where that is not the case. For example, medical analysis. So you could have a medical service which analyzes Parkinson's. So then the Parkinson's information is the actual message which you are trying to, or the private message which you are trying to convey. And then the text part should actually be hidden. Or there could be emotion analysis in a, let's say, customer service scenario. Or there could be some other, like ethnicity analysis in a government service could have ethnicity analysis such that to know which groups of people go to that service. That could be a possible valid service, like thing that we might do. And then the ethnicity would be what we are trying to analyze, and everything else should be. But so that's important to always know that the message is not always just a text. But so this applies always, these methods now apply always to the intended message, whatever that is. But so information isolation is I think, currently seems like the most important approach. But secure processing is a different category of things. So that's refers to cryptographic methods or some other like infrastructure which keeps the information where it's supposed to be. Oh yeah, privacy preserving architectures. So that's where the infrastructure is devised somehow such that we avoid leaks. I'll come back to that in a second. Acoustic interventions, that is then refers to something we can do in the acoustic space, so with the loudspeaker, microphone range of things. And improving performance, so the intended functionality of the device. Quite often, that's actually what you want to do. I'll come back to that as well. And then there's always the fallback. So actually not protecting, but asking for consent. I thought about consent also in a second. So information bottleneck. This is now looks technical, but it doesn't have to be so difficult. So the machine learning people will know this as an autoencoder structure. So what we have here now that there's a machine learning model. So this whole gray box here is the machine learning model, and we think that this part is now at the local device, and then the decoder part is in the cloud service. And then we have some sort of encoder which somehow, a bit like in speech transmission, it does something to really squeeze out the important information. And there's a bottleneck, it's basically a kind of, it reduces the information so much so that nothing else can come through except the intended information. So if the bottleneck is small enough, then all this other information cannot pass through, because there's just no space for it to pass through. And for the engineers, basically we have quantization here. So quantization, which is kind of sufficiently coarse that we can look at the bit rate, then how many bits are passing through, and then compare that bit rate with the intended message bit rate. If the intended bit rate and the bottleneck bit rate match, then we are sure that only the message can pass through, assuming that the quality at the decoder side is then good enough. Of course, we can sometimes lose accuracy. The message gets distorted, and that's then a hint that also some private information is leaking through. And the training for the lighter gray, it's not really visible perhaps here now, but the lighter gray box is for training, so how you create a model. So we have some labels and outputs, and we optimize that, like you usually do in machine learning. So that then applies to quite many scenarios where data is going out from the local device. So we will do this bottleneck at the local device and make sure that the cloud service does not get anything private except the message. And you can do that either as an autoencoder or then an adversarial approach. The adversarial approach perhaps is also interesting to the others. It again looks complicated for those who don't know machine learning, but this adversarial approach means that we have both the intended functionality or a model of the intended functionality, but we have also a model and an attacker. So we have an attacker who tries to extract information from the bottleneck, and then we have these two competition between these two, and then the intended or trusted task then becomes better because it tries to hide, so that the attacker will fail. This is not this is basically a generalization. So we don't just have to have one bottleneck, we can have multiple bottlenecks. So for example, one here could be phone-in content, next could be pitch information, and then finally it could be a speaker identity. And then depending on what we want, we can choose which parts are anonymized. So if you want to have, if you only want to know who is speaking, we will anonymize the phone-in and the pitch. And if you only want to have the speaker identity hidden, then we would anonymize the speaker identity. So this is like a dream approach. There are some examples where it works already, but we are nowhere close that we could do this for every scenario, so for every category of this. This is my personal long-term goal would be that we could have a separate line for each of these categories. To have lots and lots of categories, and then just pick and choose which we want in different scenarios. So when you talk to your boss, you have perhaps the kind of political and environmental things kind of removed. When you talk to a pizza place to order a pizza, you have everything else except the message kind of removed. And when you talk to your wife, include everything.
If we do disaggregation, how to combine it in the decoder?
Yeah, also that is the kind of so actually the decoder part, but this is the more difficult part. We don't have solution for that. So it works in some isolated cases, but even those I don't particularly like. So the issue is that, like the thing which I don't like currently is that we can do this. We can get the speech input and get the speech output, but if you don't have anonymization, then the input and output are not equal. So we are unable to recreate the original signal perfectly. And with my speech transmission background, that's a big problem. In speech transmission, we always want to be sure that if we don't do quantization, we get back the perfect original signal. So there's no it looks in the digital domain, there's not any difference. But now here, current methods are just not able. They don't come even close. So there's like a category step up which is needed. We really need to rethink the whole structure to achieve this reconstruction. Then we come to cryptography. Cryptography, now the box is not really visible here. So there's a gray box. There's a gray box here which is like halfway through the local device and over here. So that box indicates which part is encrypted. But this is a very interesting approach. This is known as homomorphic encryption, I think was the right name. I have it in the paper, so you can read it from there. But so the idea is that the local device encrypts information. So what it's actually addressing is the message part. So in many cases, we don't want to do some processing in the cloud, but we want to make sure that the cloud cannot leak that into anything else. So in very, very sensitive contexts. So now if we encrypt even the message in the local device, and with some very special cryptographic methods, we can do some processing, so we can analyze that encrypted signal in the cloud, and then send the encrypted response back to the local device, and then only the local device can decode the response. So the cloud service does some processing, but it doesn't know what it did. I think it's math magic happening, which I don't understand, but it works. The central issue is that the computational overhead, so you need much more capacity in CPU, like CPU power. It's a factor of like 1,000 or 1,000,000 more capacity, both in the CPU power, but also the transmission is also much larger than what we do without encryption. And that is like the limiting factor currently, that we know how to do it, but we don't know how to do it efficiently. So for most practical problems, this is not yet viable. But they are improving, so there's some hope. This should perhaps be the first slide. But, so cloud versus local processing. So most of our approaches are, the idea is that we have a local device and then it sends only the reduced information. So we have somehow removed information so that the remote service gets only the message, or mostly, or at least less of these other things, such that the advertiser then can't have access to some things. But of course, you can, so it still has access to some things. If you want to really be sure that nothing goes to the secondary service, we can do local processing, so that only your phone or the local device has access. That is possible. It has, again, these resource problems that if you're running a large language model on your phone, your battery will know it. It's just not smart to do really expensive processing on a local device. So most of the time your CPU is not used, but you have the capacity to do that. So you are basically buying a phone which is much too expensive for the services you are actually using. So that is the problem with local processing. So for, in the cloud, you can much more like have multiple users at the cloud would always be active. Or if there's a time when no one is there, they can kind of close down part of the cloud servers, so that they can save energy that way. So from an energy conservation approach, this is much better, the upper part, than the local part. But if you want to be really sure, then yes, you should use local service. But basically, my thing is that kind of even then we had some cases where we are still leaking information from this connection as well. So even that is not entirely private. And so if you have a digital device, or if you have a device, then your privacy is threatened. It's not possible to be completely protected. So the only device I've seen which is perfectly privacy preserving is my daughter's plastic phone, which has no battery in it. Yes. This video, this is also technical. I will go only shortly this through. One of the issues we have is that so when we train models, we need data, lots of data, and the best data is which closely corresponds to what happens in real life. So the user's data would actually be the best data to train our models. So we have users here. So we would like to get access to that data, but that's a privacy problem. But if we train the models on the edge devices, so the local devices, would do the model training, and then send only the model updates, so we only communicate the model back to the cloud. Then less information, less private information goes to the cloud. In principle possible, so that's known as distributed learning. This particular case is federated learning. But you should not be mistaken. I mean, these model updates also contain private information. So it's not a complete protection, but it helps. The main issue I have with this is that, well, the two main issues are that, so of course the model updates contain private information, but also the models are usually very large, very large. So to communicate them is expensive. And if you have millions or hundreds of millions of users, now suddenly the expense becomes really large. So the resource consumption is limited here. But also then, when you change the model structure, so you have a new model, then you lose all information. You cannot reconstruct, so you cannot reuse the data. So it's very hard then to know if the new structure is better than the old structure, because you don't have the same data. So it's not reproducible. As last ones we have two acoustic domain things as mitigations. Here, suppose let's see. Observation tracking, yes. I'm trying to remember which one this is. Oh yeah, no, I did it, yes. So the loudspeaker is here and the microphone is here. So so Alice is the owner here. She interacts with the local device, and then we want that only Alice hears the responses. So so Eve should not understand what the loudspeaker is playing. And that can be done. So that we can have, if you have multiple loudspeakers, then they kind of, if you are just in the right place in the room, you hear what the combination of loudspeakers tell you. But if you are in the wrong place, then they start to interfere with each other, these loudspeakers, such that you can hear a sound, but you don't hear what they are saying. There are also ways of doing this actually without, so that it's a, also I think so, ultrasound, so that there's a physical interference between ultrasounds which produces a sound such that Eve cannot hear anything, but Alice can hear it. But that requires then specialized loudspeakers. But yeah, so there's many ways of doing this. But it basically also requires that you know exactly where Alice is. So if Alice moves like this, then she can't hear it anymore. If you move your head, you might not hear it anymore. So it requires very accurate knowledge of where the head is of the authorized listener. And then the kind of the other sorry, no. Oh, I lost my track. Yes, there were two things here, but now I lost track of which one it was. I'll give you a link to the paper. You can see what the difference was. Just a short mention about a connection to the real sciences. So in overall, like the privacy theory, differential privacy, so outside speech, say in the larger community of privacy, the differential privacy is like the method which gives theoretic tools of analyzing privacy. But so there the kind of approach is always that you add noise to a communication channel enough that all the information which you don't want to disseminate gets collected. So basically, if you have a speech signal, you could add a background noise loud enough that you can't hear the internet signal anymore. But with speech, it's a bit difficult because then you hide also the message. So it has to be very carefully planned how you do that. But at least this gives now the theoretical tools of how to measure privacy. But so that's mostly a pointer for those who want to read the theory as well. Right, but then now a bit more practical thing. So improving functionality was mentioned here as a mitigation. But that specifically connects to the dollhouse example. So now the local device was incorrectly activated to buy a dollhouse. So it recognized the keyword Alexa even when it came from the TV. So the wake word detector made an error, and it should not have been woken up, even though there was the word Alexa. So we need to improve the wake word module to avoid this. And it is important in the sense that quite often it's always a balance between utility and privacy. That, for example, if you try to hide all this information, at some point you start to also hide the message. So then the usefulness of the overall application reduces because you can't anymore hear what the actual message was. So that is the typical trade-off you have. That when you try to hide something, you start to hide also the intended message. But in this case, privacy and utility are not opponents. So this is the exception. That when you improve the wake word detection, you also improve privacy. So that is important to remember that quite often we have cases where they are not opposite but the same. Okay. When do we have tea break? So as discussed yesterday, I created an assessment plan for this course. Well, of course, optimally, I should have given that this already at the start of the course, but Jolly or someone can send this text to everyone, so you don't have to write it down now. But anyway, so we'd like to have the assignments on Friday morning when we start. So then probably while you guys are working on other things, then Jolly and I can assess the submissions, because they have to be submitted, or we have to give them forward on Friday. So that sets the deadline. It's not my fault. Because I know that it's the least that you have to work in the evenings as well. It's just, I wouldn't like to do that, but no option now. It's fine. So we have two options: learning diary or project plan. So learning diary, it's a tool which I use quite often in my teaching, is to kind of to think about your own learning. Important is that it's not the list of contents. It's not the kind of, we have a schedule where you can see what we have learned. You don't need to copy that. There's no point in copying that. It's more about thinking about what you have learned, how that has changed your thinking. How did it feel? Was something, did you go into an uncomfortable place? I mean, usually learning is something that you have to, what's happening here? Kind of feeling that, and that's a bit uncomfortable. So that's actually good if you have a suitable amount of incomfort or uncomfortable things. And also, like, what do you think that the impact of the, so is something, can you hear the audio? Is it good? A disturbance, okay. Yeah. But anyway, so they can also see the text here, or they can read the same thing. So also, how do you think that this, what you learned here, will change your approach to your research or your work or your thinking in the future? And then there's also that, are you happy with your own performance here in the course? So, did you feel like you were engaged? Did you feel like that you are actively participating, or did you zone out for a while? That happens. Even I zoned out yesterday. Sorry for that. But that happens. It's really hard to keep focus all the time, especially we have a bit too long sessions. We should have more breaks. I get so excited. Yes. So that is the learning diary. 2-3 pages. It's not, the page count is not so important, but don't make it too long. 10 pages is much too much. It's much work to read that. And it's one page. It's really hard to express something on that. So, and it also depends on if it's handwritten or on a computer or whatever. I don't know, what do you prefer? Both are fine. Both are fine, so yes. So either electronic or handwritten. And the project plan, so now, based on discussion from yesterday, it would be 1 to 8 people, and then you would draft a plan, or make a plan for a project. It could be an experiment, implementation, data collection, or similar. Something which is connected to ethics, trust, privacy, something like that, and connection to speech technology. In the project plan, basically the length should be similar as the learning diary. So, for example, 2 pages, but try to make it as specific as possible. So, for example, if you want to collaborate with someone, how do you find those people you want to collaborate with? How do you reach those? What is the plan for doing the actual implementation? And also, of course, importantly, what is the ethical trust or privacy problem that it has to address it, and what specific methods do you start with or plan to use? And of course, also importantly, now that it's a group project, so you need to mention who is involved, who participate, because that will be then those who get the grade from that course, or from the course. But also distribution of work, who should do which part of the project. Does that sound reasonable to you, or are there questions? No? Did you already send this to the students, or? Okay, so you got it already. Good. Just out of interest, like a general interest, is the learning diary a format which you are familiar with, or is it entirely new for you?
It's not something that we usually.
Okay, so you're not used to it. Okay, so it's part of the kind of we are required to take quite a lot of educational courses, so university teaching courses, and this is one of the tools we use that when you think about your own learning processes, you also become better at learning. So you have to be a good learner, you have to learn learning, and then by thinking about how you learn, you can identify the methods how you get better at learning. So it's a meta skill. I like it. It's kind of also feedback for us how well we did. So if there's something which was difficult, then I can think of next course how I would make it better. And that's important. So I want to make better. So I want also to get feedback. Not only praise, also feedback. Often people are polite, and that's nice, but it's not useful for me. Anyway, now I think we can go back to the previous slides. I think I have to sit down. This makes interaction with you more difficult, but my back doesn't allow me to stand the whole week. So, consent was the main topic here. So, let's get the first vote. Out of all people here, how many of you have read the complete consent kind of notice of one system in the last year? Anyone? Has anyone read the complete consent form of one system in the last year? Has anyone read ever? I have read one, but that's because my student made the consent form and I had to verify it. Yes, so I think consent forms are sort of theater. It is not a real tool, it's just a theater, a tool which is used to get some validity to something which is actually doesn't have an effect on the real consent. But then the second question is that if you would read it, would you understand it? Have you looked at some parts of the consent forms? Yes.
We don't understand.
Yes.
We do not understand, especially when we are installing some Microsoft software or something. You go to terms and conditions, all legal terminology.
Yeah, it's legalese. So then I copied here from day one the kind of some terms of human-centric AI. So accessibility and inclusivity. So we are all here are highly educated people. We don't understand it. How could we ever expect that average consumers could understand it? No way. Transparency and explainability is the same thing basically. That when you don't understand it, it's not transparent. I have no concept of it, how it actually, or you cannot explain what it actually means. But those are like applies to any consent forms on any app or any web page. But timeliness is actually particular interest for me. What I like on Android phones, I don't know if it's the same on Apple phones, but for example, the use of camera, they ask for consent to use the camera on app when they need it. So when you start to do something, let's say a QR code reader, like the bank app has a QR code reader, and only when I press that button, that scan invoice, then it asks for permissions to use the camera. So then it's very clear to me that this is the purpose. I need to scan the invoice, and that's why it needs a camera. So then it's connected, clearly connected, so it becomes transparent and explainable to me that the consent is needed for a particular purpose, and it's in time connected to the purpose. So that is a very, very small improvement that they made like 3-4 years ago into Android. Is that also in Apple phones, that same functionality? Someone is nodding here, yes, okay. But usually it's always when you buy an Alexa, you get a mile-long consent form and press OK. Yes. Second question, or like third question, do I have a real free choice? There's some nodding, like shaking your head. No. So, how do you? What do you mean that you don't have a free choice?
He says, no, are there options for us? They don't give multiple options.
Mm-hmm.
Either if you want to use the service, you have to agree to all this.
Yes. So
Hangman's not.
yeah. So that is one aspect that you need to accept everything or nothing. And sometimes, often there are no other alternatives, so no other services which you could use. But my favorite example is which I just wrote in the paper and I tried to it's now in review. I'm a bit skeptical that it probably won't get accepted, but I'm trying. But WhatsApp is my favorite example, where kind of it's owned by Meta, and Meta doesn't really have a perfect record of privacy policies. I don't trust Meta. I don't want to have anything to do with Meta, so I don't use WhatsApp, period. But many communities where I'm involved, they use, like the sporting, which I did do, the friends agree on when to go to do our sports through WhatsApp. So now I'm effectively discriminated by my community because Meta has poor privacy. And I think that's so. I have a real choice now, but that has consequences, which are unpleasant. Many still use WhatsApp, even if most realize that the privacy is not perfect. So that is a kind of a strange situation. And that is connected to multi-user scenarios that when multiple people are using, my choices have an effect on others as well. WhatsApp is the kind of one example, but also more connected to speech is that like home assistants. One person is the manager of the device and presses the consent button. Then the whole family basically is forced to be in the domain of that device. So they are exposed in the same way as the manager. Let's say, how many of you have a home assistant or similar? Just one. One. Not more. So did you ask your family for consent? I've never heard of anyone who would have asked their family for consent. So basically, the legal responsibility is transferred from the company to you. and you don't know what that means because you don't understand the legalese. I'm not fine with that. And then there's the inferring private information about others. So it's not only my privacy which is violated. So I very seldom that it's only my privacy which is violated. When I give my voice, perhaps a better example is that if you know these DNA analyzing companies, like I can't remember the names of those, but you can send your sample of your own kind of DNA to a company, and then they analyze your ethnic background. My father did that for himself. Just fine, it's kind of interesting information. I would also basically be interested in finding that out. But that means that he did that analysis, and that reveals something about me. I'm his son. My information is revealed. Okay, yes, not too bad. I'm kind of fine with that. But my daughter's information is revealed to that company. That's where I would draw the line. I could not do that. But my father didn't ask for permission. He didn't understand that. So I don't blame him because legalese is complicated. So consent is from the, like we had a bit of discussion on consent yesterday. It's also quite different level that discussion. But so this is, I see that it's a completely flawed approach overall, or like the current implementation of it. The Android implementation where you ask for consent when you need it is quite close to an acceptable level. But then comes the question of speech signals. Everything is exposed all the time. We cannot have it. So when anytime I speak, then everything would be exposed. So the consent has to be in advance. It cannot be timely in that sense. I don't know how to do that. The only thing which can be made timely is the Facebook example you talked about. That we don't know whether Facebook is listening to us through our phones, because there should be a timely consent, like, hey, I'm Facebook, can I now hear what you're doing? There should be some sort of notification when it's doing, and then we know also when it's not doing. And to make this more like, to get an emotional feeling of what this means, I like to use example of Greg. I don't know, I hope there is no one here named Greg. But so, like Greg is a person. And now Greg, that's an anthropomorphized version of the Home Assistant. So we have Home Assistant, and we now replace the Home Assistant by Greg, a person. And put Greg to sit on the table here, or in the corner. Greg sits in the corner here, while we are talking here. And then you come to a friend's house, and Greg is in the corner. He doesn't say anything, but he's in the corner. I would feel that it's pretty weird. Greg hears everything we say, but doesn't in any way interact with us. It gives me a very spooky feeling. But how could we solve that? How could Greg behave such that it would be less spooky? Have any ideas? Sorry? So if it doesn't look like human, then it feels weird. Yes, that's true. So we could make him look like a robot. But okay, now we have a robot, like humanoid robot in the corner. He's hiding, basically. So even if he's behind a desk or a chair, he can still hear us, because in acoustics is special in that sense that you can put it in a hidden place and you can still hear things. So how can we make Greg less spooky? Turn him off. Yes. How do we know that he's off? But if he could have a battery. Can we destroy it somehow? Yes. You can destroy it. Yes.
Take a consent from here.
Consent form. Yes. But so now I arrive at your home, and you have Greg in the corner. So how do I know? So consent form. So who gives me the consent form? The owner of the device. Okay, that is possible. But then we now just heard that typical users don't do that. That is extra effort that we don't want to do. I have my own idea that I have would be that kind of Greg, I would actually participate in the interaction somehow. That when a new person arrives in the room, that says, "Hey, I'm Greg. I'm sitting in a corner. I'm just kind of a servant. Don't mind me. I won't say anything, and I won't use this information in any way. I'll just I go to sleep now. Have a nice day." And then Greg goes to the corner, sit there. At least that will be basically a notification of the privacy level. Minimum requirement. Whether we trust him is a different issue. But at least it would be a step towards the right direction. And then if Greg then actually gets activated, he should always give notification. Hey, yes, Greg here. Did you speak to me? Yes, did you talk to you? Okay, I'll do that, yes. But there should be always a notification of what he's doing. So that is goes beyond the consent. Or actually, in the sense, it's also consent that then you can disagree. So if you say that, if Greg is there, you can always say that, okay, this is not enough for me, I'm not fine. Please go out the door. And then Greg walks out the door and everything's fine again. So that's the opt-out, what you can do, if you don't trust it. Can you think of any more features? I run out of ideas, but can you think of any more feature about Greg?
Maybe I can have an app where instead of Greg speaking, it destroys the experience of me being in my friend's house.
Yeah.
Because it's annoying.
Yes, it can be annoying, yes. So you would have an app?
Yeah,
What
so
would the
a
app do?
notification comes in.
Yeah.
I check my phone when I enter, whether if it's trustworthy
Okay.
or...
So you have a wearable, so either a phone or a watch or something, which notifies that now there is someone listening. Yeah. So that's a different form of a notification.
Just creating awareness.
Yeah.
Act upon.
Yes. And if it's like a small buzz in the watch or phone, that would be quite. So it is not intrusive. So that the spoken notification can be quite intrusive. It takes time away from the interaction with my friend. It's better. So intrusiveness is always a problem with acoustic notifications.
Could be, instead of a notification, you could turn a light on.
Yes.
Like that.
Light is, so that is currently, so Alexa I think has a light on when it's on, and the different light when it activates. So when it goes from the sleep mode to wake mode has activated it.
That would be less invasive.
Yes, so it is less invasive, but it's also it's a different modality. So again, an audio problem. So it's a different modality. So it's less effective in the sense that if it's behind the desk, it can still hear, but you can see that light. So it's a good addition, but I don't see it as a complete solution. And probably anyway, we need multiple different approaches.
What about like a sound like a bell?
A bell, yeah, that can be. So bell, that's a bit like the bus in the phone or watch. That you have a small notification. Just the danger is that when those happen often, either they become annoying or then you just don't hear them anymore. So, like this fan noise here, I bet you didn't hear the fan noise 10 seconds ago until I said that there's fan noise. You can zone out of that fan noise after a while.
User should have the controls.
Yes, users should have. So control is really important. It's one component of that the overall concept. So we have to have like different choices, and we can have different kind of like choices at different times.
Maybe I have a device that just controls that device. Suppose.
More devices.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Such
So
that it switches off when I'm there.
yeah.
Any user.
Okay. So yes, it will turn on only when you are there. That is possible. But then of course that reduces usability. So the other users would have to also do that consent. So it's extra effort again.
Maybe preference.
Yeah. So, but basically, that then turns on. So that helps that when you're away, then the others are safe. But when you are there, so when I come to visit you, my privacy is still threatened. So that's half the solution, the complete solution. But these are all like components of a solution. We should have multiple components, and we should also, like, depending on the threat level, we should also, like, if you say that my dollhouse, that should have more protection than when I'm asking for the weather in Japan, because buying a dollhouse has economic consequences for me. But the weather in Japan question does not have as big privacy as big consequences for me. So the protections should be higher when there are larger consequences. And this actually connects also to the discussions yesterday, was the absolute like protection of privacy. Doesn't really work. I don't feel like it works in practice. It's too tight. It doesn't see the context. So from the definitions of privacy, the appropriate level of protection is really important. Contextualized, yes. That is important. But then the computer has to analyze the context and be aware of how context. Interestingly, that analysis of context is also a privacy violation. So, for example, to know who is in the room, we have to identify the speakers. So if that information, or of course then that information of who is in the room, the local device gets that information. That's the minimum requirement. We can make it such that only the accepted users are stored, and we say that we can only identify that this user is not among the accepted users. That is possible. So that helps a bit. But still, we do have to analyze identity. Please use a microphone. I forgot them to do that.
feel more comfortable if, so basically the problem with like Greg sitting in the room is like Greg is watching us, but we have no clue what Greg is up to.
Yes.
So if I would probably feel more comfortable if I have the same kind of access that Greg has to me, like what is he or she listening and what are they doing with it, where is it going?
Yes.
So
That's a very good point. So the symmetric relationship is much easier than asymmetry. And with the big tech companies, we have a very big asymmetry. They have the power, they have much more expertise behind it. And also like hackers, when the hackers target, they can have the 100 best experts in hacking behind that, and then attacking your grandma. Of course, your grandma cannot have the same level of expertise. I wouldn't have enough expertise for that. Even though I have studied this for 10 years. So that asymmetry is really central here. But that is part of the transparency. Transparency and explainability. When we understand what Greg is doing, why is he here, what is his goal. But then we actually need to have a communication with him, so he needs to communicate with us those goals. So we are actually in interaction with him.
It's like there is no accountability, at least we don't know who's the accountable party.
Yeah.
In case like, so it's like, there is like, it's an actual person sitting there, there is somewhat of a like, okay, this is a person, this person has like some ID, electoral ID or a social security number, something, like, there is some accountability, there is a record of this person, there is a system where I can go and like make sure like, this is something that I feel like, if that person is misbehaving with me or like, harm me in some way, there is some way I can get back at this person.
Yeah.
But the Greg sitting there, you don't even know who that is. Like the account, even if like Greg does something, like you don't know who's accountable party. Like it feels weird to send a robot to jail, but then like somebody should.
Yeah, so I was also thinking about that. Accountability requires that there's skin in the game. That there's a consequence for the accountable agent, so that the company behind the robot can be accountable. So we can make some penalties for them, but it's a big. There's the asymmetry problem. It's so large that we can. If we have a lawsuit against Google or Facebook or something, we are very small to do that. But if it would be the robot or assistant, if we would again anthropomorphize that, we could feel like we have agent which is accountable, but what would be the suitable consequence, penalty, or violating? So to be accountable, I feel like that there needs to be some sort of penalty for violations. But what would be a penalty for a device?
That's what like the devices are in a moral interaction between you and me. Both of us are moral patients. So in case like you morally violate me, not that I should morally violate you back, but there is like the assurance that I could morally violate you. There is some kind of a balance. So, but if it's a mission, it's not a moral patient. I cannot possibly morally violate the machine. So there is, like you said, there is that imbalance, and that I think that is what is making people uncomfortable, and that is what is making people comfortable also with this interaction to some extent.
Yeah, but it's an interesting paradox that it both makes some people comfortable and some people uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like yesterday you were talking about like in an interaction, I need to keep some decorum in this interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot be emotionally vulnerable, not only because my vulnerability might come out, it might make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am like getting angry or crying, like I am somewhat responsible for your emotional reaction to that. With a device, I don't really have to do that.
Yeah.
So that the empathy or the device, the fact that the device lacked that empathy or that moral patience in the condition, the capacity to be a moral patient is actually sort of reassurance to me that I can just be whatever. I don't have to I don't have to think twice about how I am conducting myself also.
Yeah.
So that I think that especially in these a lot of social robots, like robots that are doing the driver, teacher, or so you are expected to treat a human driver with some respect and dignity.
Yeah.
But do you really have to do that with a self-driving car?
Mhm.
And then if you get used to treating a driver role without respect, would you, another day when you see a driver, would you actually see the human being there, or are you just going to see the road?
Yeah.
So is it going to change your moral fabric in somehow?
Yeah, that's exactly my argument as well. That there's both approaches. So both having it as like a servant role is difficult, but also treating it as a human, like an anthropomorphism is difficult. So I'm especially this kind of reward penalty aspect. I think that eats out the possibility of it being a moral agent. Yesterday, in some kind of discussions with some of you, I claimed that if a device behaves as if it has consciousness, if it's completely, as in every aspect of interaction, it behaves as if it has consciousness. Does it mean that it has a consciousness? But now, so that's a problem. My claim yesterday was that yes, we should treat it as we can treat it as a consciousness, even if it doesn't want. But now, this reward and penalty aspect, I think I would be unable to treat Greg as a human, because what would the reward mean to him? What would the penalty mean to him? So I can turn off the battery, I can push the on-off button, or I can kind of do a factory reset to erase all history. But what does Greg care? He doesn't have emotions. And even if he would display emotions, I'm not sure that I would believe this aspect of them. But that's just my feeling.
I think also it's just something that I've been thinking about. So Alexa is the most familiar example. Most of you must have watched this movie Interstellar. So there is that the robot that is assisting these people who are going to sleep, got something, the name I forgot. So at some point they have to switch it off.
Mm-hmm.
They're really, oh my god, no, we can't do that. And then so like that, people are oh no. So people started feeling for their devices, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So they don't really feel the same way about you,
Yeah.
and you're just.
There's also this animation film, it's E-Wall-E or something.
Yes.
So where a robot is sorry?
Wall-E.
Wall-E, yes. Wall-E. So that where the robot feels really human-like, like it has a personality and it has feelings, even though we all know that it's a robot. So perhaps I could see a penalty and reward kind of level in that level. But it has to go quite far from where it's now today for me to feel that empathy towards it.
Yeah, and that is very problematic. This is person, I think Cindy Friedman. Cindy Friedman's article, I think. So she talks about this perceived patiency.
Yeah.
So there is a perceived moral patiency, but then they are not the moral patient, and that's yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you treat a robot badly, and then you feel bad about it, the moral patient is you yourself, but you perceive them to be the moral patient, but they're not.
Yeah. But that is also what I tried to say yesterday, that selfless acts are often, they feel good, so they are not actually selfless. So there's a reward from selfless acts, and some psychologists claim that the reward of selfless acts is actually larger than of things that I do for myself. So it's an interesting dynamic there. Yes. And we talked about now, we went quite far from consent, quite rapid, very nice. But yeah, so I added this slide yesterday because I felt that I had forgotten this aspect of this interaction. And we could talk about this for hours. I think there's the trust things we discussed tomorrow has similar things, so we can continue with that probably tomorrow as well. But perhaps a bit more to technical aspects in between. Evaluating privacy to several systems. So suppose we have a technical module which protects privacy. Let's say it removes health information, for example. Removes the fact that someone has Parkinson's or not. And then we have two competing systems. One is better than the other. How do we determine which one is better? That is a question. Engineering question. How would you evaluate removal of Parkinson information from a system?
I could have a Parkinson's disease detection classification system.
Yes, so now without microphone, so there was a suggestion to have a classifier which tries to identify Parkinson's from the output, and then we can look at how often it's correct and how often it's incorrect, and that quite quickly then comes back to the measure known as equal error rate, which I talk more about in a second. So that is one approach. Other suggestions? Sorry?
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Probably, say for example, you're dealing at the signal level, right? I can measure privacy by mutual information between those two signals, basically, right?
Mutual information, yes, but then you need to have a representation where you can quantify information.
Exactly. So like, and if it is a classification system, like whether if it has Parkinson or not having Parkinson, right? Say for example, if I modify the signal for preserving information, right? If it is a classifier problem, I can even see like what is the probability of classification, and say whether it is equally confused between Parkinson and not Parkinson. I mean, I can model the probability as well.
So that's then very good statistics-based approach. Yes, and that's one of the approaches. So we can have attackers, or then we have statistical measures.
Correct.
And I can mention the third one is that in information theory, if we have a bottleneck, we can measure the information rate at that.
Correct.
If the message already fills the information rate.
Oh,
sorry. I made a mess. Okay, I should be back online. Yes. So there are like these three categories of the attackers, statistics, and information rate-based approaches. Now I think we've already used so much time that I don't go into the specific questions here. But still, what is the unit? So if we measure privacy, what is the unit? How much privacy? I think this is
It's an interesting
gets your mind twisted quite
it's a philosophical question as well.
Yes.
I have a very,
I've been doing this for a long time, so I have a very, see, it is also about the philosophical aspect of how you manage your data as well, right? Say for example, right, currently there are options where you can manage your data in a decentralized way, right? Completely decentralized. I mean, if you take centralized as one example where you have no control on like what your data is going. There are equally good methods that are currently available, like where you have power to own your data and share it with others only as and when it is needed from a so like there is ABBA, right? I'm not sure whether people are familiar with ABBA. It's like UPI, right? Where we use every day. There is an interface called UHI, right? Unified Health Interface, where you own the data actually, right? And if you're visiting a hospital, you can provide consent, not perpetually, only on a needed basis, basically.
So where is the data stored?
It's in your wallet, basically. It's a very
Not in my wallet, for sure. Somewhere in the cloud, right?
no, see, not necessarily, right? I mean, there are implementations that are available where you can own that information in a decentralized way, protect with your private key.
Okay, but where is this?
Yeah, it will be on your device. I mean, like
On my phone.
on your phone.
My phone dies, it's gone.
No, I mean you have ways to recreate.
So it's somewhere else also.
No.
If it's in
See,
the
that's how.
cloud-
No. You don't understand. See, that's how blockchain systems work, right? If your phone and your backup key is gone, you are done for the day, basically. Even if you.
That's the problem with that, maybe.
No. See, that's what I'm saying. You cannot get the best of the both ways, right? If you want privacy, you have to have some compromise saying that. If I want an alternate currency like Bitcoin, right? Therein lies the risk, basically, where if you lost the key, there is no way to retrieve it, basically. Because, once again, there are cryptographic, assumptions that, that's what makes it strong as well, right? So either, if you don't want a centralized kind of system to manage your data, right? There are currently options, and, Government of India is aware of it, and they are coming up with these options as well, right? There are options, but the adoption, right? When the world moved towards extreme privacy, right? They also have to move from where you are giving consent perpetually. See, the problem with right to forget, even GDPR, right? The problem is, even if I say you have to forget certain things about me, right? And there is a very good audit about that. They are auditing it very well, and the fines are heavy, steep, etc., right? But there are companies which fake. I won't say fakes. They do a soft delete. They say. From an application perspective, I've implemented these systems, and so I know, right? So that's the problem with the centralized approach, right? I just want to open up your thought process, right? In adopting to a decentralized world as well. As and when you care about lot about privacy, right? Centralized architecture has a lot of fallacies, right? We as a group or a consortium or a cohort, right, have to start thinking about decentralized models as well, right? It is not like I'm saying you should use it, but expand your thought process, and the tools are there, basically. So.
But there must be a reason why these are not popular.
There's a big microphone again, so there's a reasons why people don't use them currently, and currently they are a bit more difficult. But so there is a cost to privacy. So there is more effort if you want to protect things. But then coming back to the original question, where it is. So if it's on your phone and you use the key, then it's gone. But what you could do is to have it on your computer and your phone and perhaps on the USB stick, which you have hold. So you have and it's the three places.
One common way people use it, I mean, when they are using most expensive stuff, right? They have the backup keys written and stored in the locker.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, I mean, like I have access to that.
But it's like really weird, right? Like, privacy now you have to pay for privacy.
Yeah, but yes. Yes.
See, that's the price to pay. I mean, like, see, like
Nothing is free.
and nothing is free. Exactly. There is no free lunch, right?
Exactly. Yes. But yes. So, but coming back to the measure of privacy question, when we were unit of privacy. So we discussed here already the approaches to how to extract or test for evaluate privacy. For example, an attacker. So if you have an attacker, we can have kind of see how often the attacker fails and true positives or true positives and false positives and true negatives and false negatives. So how often it gives the right answer, when it's you, and how often it thinks that someone else is you. So that sort of measures can be measured. That is the problem with that is that it's dependent on the attacker. Build a better attacker, it perhaps not only finds much more private information. And also with the statistical the approach you mentioned, I forgot the term, the mutual information. That also depends on what's that statistical model that you build, and if that model is incomplete somehow, if it doesn't take into account some axis, for example, some dimension, then it will not be complete picture. So it depends on how well you do it. But so the only theoretically solid approach is the information theoretic approach. But before we go to the actual measures, I have to go to this picture. I forgot this. So the overall system performance. We have always two things, or at least two things. There's the privacy and the utility. Utility, it means that how well we can use it. So we have a purpose with the system. If that purpose is not fulfilled, it's not utility, the utility goes down. And for both parts, so the privacy and utility, we have two parts. We have the objective performance and then the subjective. And the subjective refers to how we feel about it. Does it feel private? And does it feel like it fulfills the use what it's supposed to do? And we should always measure all four to get the complete picture of the system.
If signal to noise ratio of the signal what you
Yeah.
are transmitting,
Yes.
it is very low.
Hmm?
If you are able to make it very low,
Yeah.
all these things will be attained.
Yes. Also, if SNR, so if it's a very noisy signal, for example, now microphone signal. If I go very close to the fan here, put the microphone there, you can't hear my voice anymore in the microphone signal. So my privacy is protected. The SNR is very bad. My privacy is protected, but no one can hear me anymore. So the utility goes down. So the output is useless.
Intended user will have a proper key for that.
Key. Okay. So then you talk about cryptographic methods. Yes, but so the cryptographic methods, so then kind of you can devise some things which work. Yes.
Even if unauthorized person taps the information, actually information will be there, but he is getting it as a noise.
Yeah. But so yes, the cryptographic methods operate, then would measure the utility and privacy a bit differently. So then the privacy measures would then be about how effective is the cryptographic method. So how much effort do you have to spend to break the encryption?
I have a comment there as well, right? See, like in most of the even implementation, when I say from an implementation perspective, right? Even I'm practically talking about from an architecture perspective, right? Even with encryption, right? Where would you use the? Where would you put the encrypted key?
Yeah.
Right. Is it an HMS? I mean, see, like highly secure systems should and will use HMS.
Yeah.
But sorry, HSM. Sorry, hardware security module. But the problem with it is very expensive, and even enterprises, practically right,
Yeah.
unless otherwise you are an energy or a nuclear thing, I mean, like they hardly use HSMs.
Yeah. But
So therein lies a problem as well with all the encryption, like.
but that comes back to the issue with the wallet or the phone with the thing that when you have encryption, the utility goes down because it's more difficult to use.
Correct. Exactly.
Yes. So yes, now we go to. So I think we can. Or when is lunch? Are we already much late from that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we have to go lunch, and we continue with the actual measures after the break.